What's up, everyone? Welcome. We'll give you guys a few more minutes to get on and get situated before we start. There we go. All right, as you guys can see, so we've got a few of us on here from the MF Capital Partners team. I'm Melissa Forbush. We've got Ryan Wooley, and then we also have Lindy Daniels. Now, Lindy Daniel heads up our asset management. Some of you have talked to her before. We're excited to have her on so that she can really dive into what's going on in the property and update everyone. And then we also have the Rockstar Tasha. All of y'all know her. She's going to be answering questions. We're going to make sure that making sure that any Q&A question that you have is answered. So as you think of things, feel free to put those questions in the Q&A. If you would like to discuss anything with us, put it in the chat. But it does help us stay a little bit more organized if your questions are put in the Q&A. Either way, y'all, we're going to make sure that these questions are answered. We have a lot to cover. So let me share my screen here. Okay. Y'all are here because you are an owner of the Aspen Apartments. Now, we acquired this property obviously a little bit ago. You all know that we've had some curveballs here, and we felt that it would be the most use of everyone's time to just get on and discuss not only what's going on in the property, how it's performing, but understand what the team is doing to protect your investment. So let's get started. We are going to start with performance. This is the biggest question that you all ask us. What are some challenges? What are some solutions that we've seen? Ryan, Lindsay, do you guys want to jump in and let's talk about performance first?
Go for it, Lindsay. I'll let you. I like that you take this over, and then I can answer any questions as they come up.
Perfect.
Hey, Melissa, I think that the chat is not available. Somebody sent me a text.
Oh, okay. I will work on that while
Lindsay goes over it. Perfect.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody hopping on today so that we can go over and answer questions that you all have. As far as the performance at Aspen, there definitely has been some challenges, that have kind of rolled over from coming out of COVID. A few things that have happened within the court system in Texas as well that I will explain a little bit more in detail that have made it a little bit of a slower process in our recovery, because we did have some challenges with our delinquency at one point, and this was a little earlier on in the year, which we're coming out of that, and hopefully that is behind us. However, I am going to focus quite a bit on that metric or that point for the sake of, we had at one point, I would say it was about 25% of the property that had some sort of a balance, whether it was $5 to a month's rent. The team was diving in, focused on economic occupancy, and making sure that we're putting as much money in the bank as we can. We got to a point where we decided, we are just going to go ugly early, I like to call it, and get those out that are non-payers. So, we started filing, we're making some headway, and I think we were about May or June when the courts came back to us, and because of what was happening in the market as a whole, not, wasn't just specific to Aspen by any means, we got reeled in on our ability to file on evictions. We were told by the courts we could file on a max of 2 per day. And when you have, 20 apartments that you are trying to get out with balances, that takes a little bit of time. So that was the challenge that we had been presented with. So we were just very diligent, making sure that we were consistently 2 a day. They were getting filed on, following up, opening doors every single day, making sure people hadn't skipped, or trying to put pressure on to people as much as we could within the realm of the law, to get people to go. As folks have been moving out, we have been able to go in and get the units turned. The leasing velocity has been fantastic, and we've been able to combat the skips with move-ins. But again, it was that getting through, really it's been June, July, August was the heavy lift of getting folks to the eviction process, and then August, September, October, of really starting to see the big change of those going out with us filling up with paying renters. So, 6-7 months ago, occupancy was high 80s, low 90s, low 80s, high 70s collected. Today we sit, at month end yesterday at 96% occupied, but our collected occupancy was at 86%, which means that we're full and able to start pushing rents actually at this point. But we're actually putting the money in the bank. So it's not I don't want to say a fictitious number, but it's that 94 to 96% occupancy is a more accurate, true number of where the property is performing at, not 96, but people aren't paying. So we've put in place with management. There are different points where I don't want to say it's foolproof, but the team on site has no ability to override leases or to, maybe try to let somebody slide in if they're not meeting the criteria. It's all on the back end, nothing can be overridden. So we've also put into place checks and balances to ensure that we're sticking to the criteria when we're approving people to move in, to avoid a situation where we, inherit the large delinquents. That I would say has been the biggest challenge, and I'm very grateful, or excited to be able to let everyone know that we are out of that. And the last 2 months we were in January was a much higher money in bank than December, and then February exceeded that. And I'm going to take my comment back about the biggest challenges, because there is actually 2 other items that have really played a role into the financials not being where we wanted them to be. And so in addition to the write-off, which is now in the past, is also been the interest rates that we've been challenged with and figuring out solutions to offset that. Insurance in Sunbelt states, which was something we didn't know, not even 6 months ago did we know what was going to take place in the insurance market and the increases that we've seen there, and the measures that we've taken to help combat that. On that note, Ryan, I don't know if you want to talk it all on to those points before I jump in with insurance, or if we want to take some questions.
Yeah, let me hop on this. A lot of you guys want to know, what learning lessons do we have? And first I want to tell you guys this is, we have a fund that we have, 2.5 million of that into Aspen itself. Within the fund, Tyler and I have about $1 million into that fund. And so, as investors, you guys like to know that our money is alongside yours. So we're very aware of what's going on and what's happening. And like I said, our money is there as well. And so we want to make sure that we fix these issues. I think one of the biggest learning lessons is COVID, as Lindsay spoke to that. We hired on an AI company. It was an AI management company to come in and oversee the property. About 4 months into it, they weren't performing like we thought. During COVID, we really thought that as an AI company being able to reach out, one of the things they touted was, look, because of AI, we can get into them through text messaging. Our collection percentage is going to go way up. We found that, after 4 months, that just didn't happen. Lindsay's been in the industry for about 20 years, and she'll tell you 4 months of that happening, it's taken us about a year now to recoup from that, so a huge learning lesson of what's going on. And so because of that, evictions, took a little bit longer. There weren't things that we were able to do, collections, delinquencies obviously were up there due to those collections. And so because of that mess, we finally have out all of the bad evictions that we've needed to, which is what Lindsay's saying, is those numbers are now where we're wanting to see them. I know that Derek asked about refi and cash out refi, and are we planning on holding the asset? The reality is this, and Lindsay, I'll let you jump into insurance right after this, is anything at MF Capital Partners, anything as a team that we look at is investor experience, right? What is the investor experience? What would we want to have done in this investment? And I see my good friend Mark Berger's on here. Mark, good to see you. But everything we look at as investor experience, we have opportunities. 5 months ago, we we're looking at, hey, do we want to refinance? Do we want to sell? Do we want to hold on to the property? Do we want to extend with our existing loan right now? Robert, I think it was Robert sent a few questions of, interest rates being so low during the time we bought it. Why didn't we lock it in for a longer period? Well, if you guys remember, as we took over this property, it was a mismanaged property. That's where we've had a lot of our success is through mismanaged properties. This was $250 under market rent. And so we had to get a bridge loan on that. With a bridge loan, we had to get it at a little bit higher of an interest rate, which was a 2-year loan with 2 6-month extensions. Those extensions, right? The loan comes due or matures in June of this year. So in June of this year, we have to make a decision, right? Which is what we're making right now. March 15th, we should know if Greystone's going to allow us to extend. Given where we're at with how the property's performing over the last 2 months, 3 months, Greystone's liking the projection of where we're going, so it's very likely that they extend for us. Well, what's that extension mean? We know where interest rates are at today. More importantly, we know inflation and interest rates kind of run simultaneously, right? I think inflation's at 6.42. I think is the last I looked, somewhere around there. And it looks like inflation's coming down, which we're seeing interest rates starting to come down. And so, we feel really good that if we can get those 2 6-month extensions through Greystone, that listen, refinancing may be the best opportunity. Selling in today's market, right, does not give us the best investor experience to you guys. It would be selling and hopefully crossing our fingers that, that you get back a return of capital. Well, return of capital is not the highest in investor experience, right? At all, period. It's nothing when we invest in a deal. Like I said, we've got $1 million, we got 2.5 million of the fund in there, right? It doesn't get us the returns and doesn't put you in the position that you guys got into. Some of the biggest reasons that people invest with us, as a team is, our annual returns are close to 38%, and so we want to make sure that every decision that we make, that we're just maximizing the total return that we can get. So anyway, I'll let Lindsay speak to some of the issues right now of insurance, things that are affecting us or have affected us, especially over the last 6 months, right? There's no doubt that Texas took a huge hit in insurance because of the hurricanes. I live in Florida. We experienced some of the same things, some of those natural disasters, things that come through that affect Texas, right? Even though there's hurricanes that don't necessarily come through Dallas, it affects Texas as a whole. And so insurance has killed us, and taxes we're seeing an increase that Texas hasn't seen. So I know, Robert, you asked, why was that not projected? Listen, you don't see it over 40%, where we were able to protest those taxes and it still went up 36%, is I think what taxes went up altogether. So, Lindsay, why don't you speak to the taxes and insurance? Once again, if you guys have any questions, Derek, I hope that answered your question on the refi or the cash out. If you do have an additional question, ask that and I'll touch base after Lindsay goes over insurance and taxes.
So for the sake of taxes, I'm going to throw out a few factual numbers just to help everyone understand what we've been up against with Tarrant County. So for 2021, or the year going in over seller, we had budgeted the few percent increase, which is and I'm not saying it's always the right equation, but in my experience in all of these years, unless you get a notice stating otherwise, when you're redoing your next year's budget, you're typically anywhere from 5 to 10% maybe on a high end, and that's usually to overshoot what you're expecting for increases in taxes. So we did budget into 2022 expecting some type of an increase, but as Ryan mentioned, we didn't budget quite enough. So about 427,000 is what was in the budget for 2022 for taxes. When we got the actual tax notice, the amount due was 618,000. Well, it's actually just shy of 619,000. So we did protest it, as Ryan stated, and we're able to get it down to the total there came down to 551 was the final number, which we were grateful to see some sort of a savings, if that's what we want to call it. But that was still, the actual amount was a 32% increase in addition to what we had budgeted for. So that hurts a little. But again, it's with taxes, with the insurance, if it's something we really, there's not much we can do about, then we're gonna have to find other ways to help offset that and to overcome that. So a couple of things, I don't know the best way or the route to go to make sure I'm delivering the message well. With the taxes, with the insurance rates, we were about $600 a door. And this was not just specific to Dallas or Tarrant County, but other parts of Texas and the Sun Belt, is increases went up to, it was actually north of about $1,600 a door. And right now we're being told future is potentially up to $2,200 a door in Texas, which is just outrageous. And that's just happened in the last 6 months. Really since October, we've seen those changes. So I would say it was about 7 months ago, Ryan had tasked me and one of the other gals at MFCP to look into a master policy program where we can start putting all of our properties onto it and try to get better rates for our properties across the board. So Aspen, just recently, within the last 30 days, has been able to, with their renewal coming up, they're now onto the MFCP master program, which it's still an increase. I call it the best worst rate we could get, just because the insurance rates have gone up so much. So for what Aspen, if it was a standalone, would have renewed the insurance policy at, it would have gone up about just, it was just under 40% over what we were paying before. With it going on to the master program, it's more like a 26% increase, which I know it's still a big increase, but that's why I call it the best worst rate that we were able to get for Aspen to help offset, you know, what it would have been otherwise. Knowing that and getting ready to work with Greystone, whether it's, you know, getting an extension, you know, come March 15th, looking forward to June and July, is I did sit down and go over with Greystone and we went through the forecast of where the property was. And this was starting back in January. Then after February's financials, going through the numbers again. And I am pleased, I know it doesn't help, you know, the past, but I'm pleased, like today looking forward, that by the end of the year, based on true numbers that we just hit and money in the bank, is we get caught back up to our year 2 underwriting by the end of this year. And that for me is you know, it's an important metric and making sure the team's watching. So again, it doesn't help like with the prior distribution, but getting us to that refinance point, or where we can make those steps and not, you know, be able to produce a better return than you know, otherwise. That said, there's also another group that we've been working with as a solution. It's Meridian Capital. And with them, they have taken the financial for Aspen and they have broken it down for me to a dollar amount, like where I need to move the rent roll between now and in 6 months to be able to get the most out of the refinance. So we're not going into it blindly or, you know, fingers crossed, just hoping we can get there. I know a dollar amount, which then I've taken that dollar amount and backed my way in with lease expirations over the next 6 months and how each of those is going to have to be impacted. New move-in rental rates, which those have to be out per floor plan in order for us to achieve the max amount on the refinance. So it's all hands on deck. That's for sure.
Hey, Lindsay,
yeah.
to that point,
Mm-hmm.
Derek asked what the percent of occupancy was at currently. Do you mind just touching on that? I know you mentioned it earlier, but
Yes, they actually, for the month of February, the average, I like to use the average, not the last day of the month. So the average physical occupancy for the month of February was 96.5%. And again, like the collected occupancy was, you know, I think it was 86 or 87% was the final of what we collected of that. I personally think the economic or the collected occupancy is the number we should be focused on, because that's what we're putting in the bank. The 96% tells me we need to start pushing rents more.
very true. I love that. And then just really quick, Lindsay, to talk about the original due diligence, What was missing? Steve just asked, before we move on to Ryan, I want to ask, what was missing in the original due diligence that led so quickly to the substantial difference of actual results versus the plan?
I don't, and I wasn't here for the due diligence, but I've looked back, of course, to the documentation and what we have on file. And I can't say that anything was necessarily missed. I don't know that we really understood or would have known what the courts were going to do. We did buy the property with understanding that, yes, there's a delinquency, but that's kind of part of the appeal to a degree on a mismanaged deal, right? Because we're going to go in, we're going to get folks out, we're going to renovate the units, and we're going to push rents in and just move forward, not knowing that when it came down to it, even this was before the moratorium had lifted, but you could still evict people for non-payment. But the being slow and being behind with the AI company was definitely, it hurt us. But January 1, that was the big focus, and it really became a matter of the courts and how quickly we were able to move things through with them. So I think we were slow initially to react with the new company, and then once making that realization. But like Ryan said, 4 months is a lot to recover on.
So maybe this is a question for both you and Ryan. This is what we have another question in the chat that says, with respect to the tenant delinquencies, did MFCP review tenant payment and delinquency rate history prior to the purchase? In other words, was the high delinquency unexpected or directly resulting from an unexpected event, i.e. COVID, or was there a trend of higher than normal delinquency rates prior to the purchase?
So I can't give a specific dollar amount or number on that. I can go back and look and give you better information. What I can say to that is, with the seller providing documentation, and I think this is another lesson that we've learned over the last while too, is when you're getting presented information from a seller and they're showing their occupancies and they're showing all of these things and how great it is, and then the day of closing you go and you start walking units and you realize that there's a good portion of what they said was occupied that wasn't. And so that immediately becomes units get moved out. And so you inherit that. I can't give the exact figure on that, but I do know that was an issue. And so
I can jump in there, Lindsay, is, a lot of the properties, for those of you who've invested numerous times with us, with Sugu Capital, with MFCP, or with GLP, a lot of the properties, especially in the Carolinas, we take on are mismanaged, right? And there's delinquencies in there. And so we know that there's a stabilization period of going in and handling that and getting those tenants out. One of the biggest learning lessons, like, Lindsay and I just said, is, having this company in there, the AI company, really just set us back. And then, obviously with COVID, I know that someone brought up COVID, that we keep talking about COVID. Sure, COVID took a long time to get evictions out. I mean, that's no secret. It wasn't until recently, over the last, 4 to 6 months, that we were really able to just go in guns a-blazing and get people out. So, this isn't anything new that, like, taking down a property. You look at what our annual rate of return is at 38%, our track record, even leaving the properties. There was properties that in the Carolinas that we sold off that, listen, it was 48% returns that we got on it, annual returns, and delinquencies were through the roof. One of the biggest themes about our team is going in, looking at identifying the key issues or key solutions that we have with them, and then doing evictions. Just so happened during COVID, we weren't able to do evictions as fast as we wanted to. So like Lindsay said, sometimes it was twice a month, and that it's hard, right? It's hard to sustain that. But, today I know a lot of you guys want to focus on what are the solutions, right? What are the solutions that we want to focus on? Because for us, we made the best decision we could with the AI company that we had, right? During COVID times, typically we would go knock on doors, right? Like we would have our management team go knock on doors to see, what we could do to get payments in. That just couldn't happen during COVID, and so we learned our lesson from that. But, today where we're at, Lindsay, if you can tell them about this last month's financials and kind of where we're at with this last month's financials and where we're trending to, I think that you guys would look at that as an investment, knowing that we're trending in the right direction.
Yes, absolutely. And I apologize. I should have had some percentages pulled up prior to the call. I haven't seen
Right here, here's the thing. You pull those up.
Okay.
Lindsay, go ahead and do you need a minute to pull them up, and then I'll answer Sarah's question. It says, is anyone monitoring the Google Map reviews and responses? Sarah, yeah, I'm always looking at reviews, you know, not only as an investment company with MFCP, but we own an education company as well. And so we look at those, but we're always looking at, you know, each of our apartments and the reviews and how can we best, you know, learn from those. You know, we have a third-party management company that we're in contact with weekly over things that we can control. Can control. We also know that sometimes tenants are going to post, and we address those as best we can. Some of them, I think that Robert, you sent in an email saying there's gunshots. Sure, there's people in the neighborhood that I'm sure shoot off guns, or I haven't heard that, Lindsay. I haven't heard on any of our weekly calls at all, but I don't think that we've heard any gunshots recently. I know in our Carolina properties, there was gunshot. It was a Tommy gun, actually a Tommy gun on that property that they found, but I haven't heard anything like that here. So I do know that sometimes people post things that, you know, out of frustration, but we address anytime that a review comes in, we address it immediately with the management company to go address that. One of the biggest things that we thrive on is treating people good, right? And so we don't want management company in there. We don't want on-site managers or leasing agents or maintenance who disrespect tenants. So we absolutely address those right away.
And I'll add that is a bigger focal point on my weekly calls with the team and making sure that, you know, they're getting in there and combating, you know, even the negative talkers, because you're right. I mean, more times than not, it is the person that got evicted that is now mad at us, or, you know, we're the bad guy because they couldn't pay their rent. But we can do better. And so I'll add that to my the weekly calls to make sure we're addressing that and they're responding. There's third-party companies that, if you know, they could hire that will do that for us. But that would come down to cost, because right now I am watching all of the expenses everywhere we can to make sure we're not, you know, overspending in any area, or that, you know, money we just don't want to be spending right now. All right. So do you want me to jump into financials, Ryan, or do you?
Yep, let's go ahead. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay. Oh, maybe I need one more second to hurry and just do a few calculations on the actual. So as far as the rents on the property, so I'm going to go back over like a year ago, where we are from there to here. And the reason why is because, sure, it may not over those months been the biggest impact because we had all the people moving out, but it tells a story of this is where we are today. We're not dealing with the evictions and the skips that we were. It's, you know, true money in the bank. So it's a better idea of, okay, that's one thing, we didn't give concessions. We didn't, you know, give big rent discounts by any means over the last 12 months, as we have been, you know, basically refilling up due to all of the move outs. So from the actual January over our February 2022, we saw a 5.5% rent increase, which is definitely on the light side. But from where we are today, the momentum at 96% with the higher collection, we're going to be able to drive that number. Like I said, me working with Meridian and knowing where rents need to be, as of today, over what, you know, the rents were just last month, new move-ins are taking at least $100 rent increase, which is 8.5 to 10%. And then the renewals, each one is just looked at individually. So rent growth has still been, even though it's not anything to write home about, there still has been positive rent growth over the last 12 months. We did also change, the property was on a flat fee utility billing. So we did switch to a company that does the bill back through RUBS. And again, like looking at the last 12 months financial, you don't really see much of an impact. That's, you know, as people skip or move out and we have to do the write-off in their books, it offsets that number. So into the end of 2022, those numbers were like $1,000 a month. Well, this month and last month, it's north of $7,000 in what we've really collected. in RUBS income. So, that will continue to just compound each month as we move forward as well. 1 year ago, the total EGI on the property was at 187,000. We finished January at 221, and I haven't seen finals yet, so I don't want to speak on it like a actual factual number for February, but I do know that it was higher than where we even ended the January. And then expenses, we are getting back in line with expenses. We did have a few items that we were not anticipating, boiler that, had to be replaced. And so those expenses were unbudgeted, but from here forward, we've put some different metrics in place and checks and balances to ensure that we're not overspending, to make sure we're dialed in on expenses as well. And other than that, we have stopped spending except for life safety and items that are must-haves for right now.
Okay, so back to Mark asked a question, and I know you talked a little bit about this, but he says, I believe you read that you have 10 ongoing evictions. How long will that take to get the non-payers out, rehab, and new tenants in? What are you anticipating?
I know for sure there are 2 of those apartments, one of which is a 6-month delinquent apartment. And I will just say that that particular tenant knows the game that they're playing. And so they file answers and do this whole charade, with the courts and back and forth. So for those 2, I would love to give an answer, but I can't. They're the highest. Those 2 make up the biggest balance of our delinquency, really. And until we just get, they're with the courts back and forth, they both do have court dates. I'll get an update on my calls tomorrow with the team. But aside from those, we have the 8. I see those being out within the next week to 2 weeks. And then from there, the team really, they've been doing great with leasing and pre-leasing, that I don't see those going past 3 weeks to get moved back into with new tenants. I don't know for sure on those units because I have not seen them. And again, I'll follow up with the team tomorrow. There's a chance maybe they have been renovated already, maybe not. And so that will just depend too, once we walk the units, the condition. But if it's a renovation, it doesn't take more than 3 weeks. If it's a non-renovated unit, they typically turn them within 7 days for us to get someone back into them.
Awesome. And then Ryan, let's go back to the refinance bridge loan. When we're talking about that, Mark asked, what is the rate renewal for the bridge loan? And at what point do you go for refinance with a non-bridge loan? Are you considering getting agency debt as well?
Yeah, so one of the things, we'd love to go back with Greystone. We currently have this, the loan through Greystone as a bridge debt. Melissa, can you bring that up so I can make sure I can read here I can go answers. That's all right. The thing is the rate is at 5.1%. We currently have a rate cap in there, two 6-month extensions, Mark. But we are working, and once we stabilize, right, once we get into an area, if we continue the financials, like we did last month, and we do it next month and the month after, we typically need 3 months to be able to do that. After we get 3 months, we stabilize that and get our debt service or debt coverage ratio up where it needs to be. Then we can get into agency debt, but we need at least 3 months to be able to do that. Really like to see 6 months, but that's where we're going into June. Like we said earlier, we have a call March 15th with our lender to go over the options of extension. So currently we're looking at the options of refinancing. Lindsay's brought up Meridian. We've looked at that option. Obviously selling. Unless we got something at, right around 30 million, it doesn't make any sense for us. That's, right around 140,000 a door. And so Mark, to answer your question, our best bet is to get the 2 6-month extensions, get those interest rates down, and then being able to refinance. If we can refinance and pull out some capital, getting you guys a return of capital as well at the time. But listen, the whole play on this property, right, this investment was a 3 to 5 year hold, never a 2-year hold. It just so happened to be that the loan was 2 years with 2 6-month extensions, we knew that we might have to utilize those extensions to get into either a refi or into agency debt. Anytime, and Mark, the reason for the rest of you that know that Mark is super sharp individual, he asks a lot of these great questions. But anytime that we can get into agency debt, I know Robert, you asked us in an email, why don't we? One, the property was not stabilized, and now where we are stabilizing it, we're having some good months now. That looks like it's more of a reality. And with inflation coming down, we know that interest rates are starting to come down a little bit as well. Especially with Fannie Freddie loans. So anyway, we're extremely hopeful for that. But as long as we continue with the financials where they're at, you heard from Lindsay of getting all these evictions out, Lisa brought up a good point is we're leasing out these units at $100 plus with not doing a lot to the units. And so if we continue with the financials the way we're going, being able to refinance and get into an agency debt should not be a problem at all.
My only comment to that, Ryan, is I'm not going to say if, I'm going to say when, because we are on a good,
Yeah,
we are not going back from where we are.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, that was perfect. So y'all, let's move on to the next part, which I know, Ryan, you touched a little bit on. If the property is not performing, which we've gotten this question quite a bit. So I want to answer this as a whole. If Aspen is not performing well, why would Akahi invest? Ryan, do you want to answer that one?
You said someone asked that question in here?
Yep, we've had that question a couple times. Oh, sorry, not here. It was before, emailed before.
Yeah, I think that, here's the thing. It's like I said at the beginning, right? Akahi has invested $2.5 million. We've got $1 million of our own money into the Akahi fund. Into Aspen, we have $250,000 of our own money into Aspen as well. So, that combined, we have $1.25 million altogether that's there. Why do it? We believe in the project. I mean, we would never invest in a property unless we put our money alongside your money, ever. We also know that most of our properties are 3 to 5 year holds. We've just been fortunate enough in a time to be able to sell them off in 2.5 years. We've been fortunate, due to the market and how market shifts. We were able to sell most of our portfolio off in the Carolinas due to the market, due where interest rates were at during that time, and we made a killing. But we also know how market cycles work, right? They're typically every 3 to 5 years and every 5 to 7 years. This is exactly why when we get into a property, we say 3 to 5 year holds. Sometimes we say 5 to 7 year holds. Why? Is because we identify and look at market metrics, historical data, and we're able to determine based on our underwriting where we need to be and how long we need to hold a property to be able to get the returns that we want. Someone asked, where's your projected, returns at still? Well, our projected returns still are in line with our original business plan to you guys. We don't project anything less than that. We like to underpromise, overdeliver. I think it was right around 19% is what was projected on this property. And so, that happens over a 3 to 5 year period. And so why would we invest on the Akahi fund? Because we believe in the project, right? We believe in what's going on, and you're starting to see that in the financials right now of where this property is going. I tell every single one of you guys on this, when we get into properties, we go through 3 phases, right? The 3 phases are this. One's a stabilization. Sometimes stabilization happens in a 4-month period, a 6-month period. Really, we like to say 6 to 10 months. During COVID, you can extend that to like a 10 to 16 month period. That's stabilization. And then I like, I'm a golfer. I always give this analogy. I like moving day, which is Saturday. Moving time comes after that year period of stabilization, right? We want to stay. In fact, I love it. Lindsay has a putter in her corner there. If you haven't seen that, Lindsay is a golfer. So I love that. In fact, I told her
which
when it warms
clearly
up,
means she's a better golfer than you are, Ryan.
Fridays are golf days for sure. So, the reality is after that, it's moving day. Well, guess what, guys? COVID is over. I think that Sharon, I think it's Susan or Sharon, I'm not sure who asked that question. Sharon Rubin, I believe you asked that question is, we keep talking about COVID. COVID's over, right? We're not giving that excuse anymore. We're not, saying anything about that. You look at the financials and where they're at today, and this property is trending, during moving time, right? So we're starting to see those financial returns. Like Lindsay said, there's $224,000 that hit the account last month, which is phenomenal. The property is where it needs to be outside of taxes, right? Outside of taxes and insurance. The solution on the insurance is this, is the master policy, like Lindsay said, as MF Capital Partners, continues to increase its unit count, guess what? Insurance goes down, right? And so Aspen will benefit from our master policy. And so what's that benefit mean to you guys? You know, it goes into your pockets as well, right? And so, Melissa, hopefully that answers your questions, but we believe in our projects. We believe in over a 3 to 5 year period, we'll be able to hit business plan projections, if not surpass those.
Ryan, if I may, one thing that I would like to comment on that, because I 100% agree. And with Aspen and the timing and going into the Akahi fund, the way I look at it is then like, what were we doing on our other, properties that we're looking at, or what's our business plan today as I'm looking at deals or finding, that next deal is. I was, and thank you, Ryan, for aging me with the 20 years in the industry, but I was a part of the multifamily space in 2008 during the crash, and 2008, 2009, those, and I know the term, but it's like those that paid to play, that went in at higher interest rates and took those risks, in 2011 and 12, as interest rates did start to come back down and drop. And that was kind of the business plan, is 12 months, 18, 24 months out, was we'll go in high, we'll refinance and go from there. And that's the way that I really look at it with Aspen is, it was unfortunate for the time that it took us to get all of this behind us. But now I look at it as the same as if, the deal we close on today is, all right, it's, 12 months, it's go time. We're managing to an event. Let's get to that refi. Let's get us, locked in at the better interest rate. And that's exactly, what, like I said, we're already to the dollar. I know what we need to be. And so we are watching, and, it's important. I personally, I take it very personal, and that's my job, is to ensure that we're providing returns and the properties are performing. So, we'll get there. It's not an option for me to not, so we'll get there.
Hey, I do want to address something, Lindsay, if I can interject here. Melissa, you had on your slide that you passed right through is distributions. I know that many of you have wondered about distributions, and wanted to get distributions. Hopefully you guys are in it for the long-term play as well. Here's the reality as if I were to talk to Mark, which Mark, we need to hop on another call. I love talking to Mark. Politics is what I like to talk with Mark about. Hopefully he has a grin on his face right now. But the reality is this: distributions we would love to pay out right now. Love to pay out. The reality is this: some operators will pay out distributions. Okay, they'll pay out distributions, and it puts the property at a financial risk, right? At a financial risk. And so I would ask you guys this, and you can answer to the chat. Do you want us to pay out distributions and not be able to put the money back into the property, which could put us at risk, right? Or would you rather us build up the bank account, right? Being able to make sure that we're in a position to make sure that the property is healthy, to make sure that you're getting the returns that you guys want. At the end of the day, right? Like, we would love to pay out distributions. We would love to have done it 12 months ago. Each quarter, as we send out quarterly returns, it's painful sometimes to go, hey, look, there's not a distribution. Not only that, 1.25% or 1.25 million, Melissa, is what to us, right? And I say us, meaning, we have our money invested. We're losing $100,000 a year not getting distributions. That's an 8% preferred return. It's a lot of money to us. So we're right along with you all, is going, what do we got to do to the property to get it to a point to pay out distributions? But we also have to be smart and make sure that we're not doing things to lose the property. I see a lot of operators out there that are losing properties right now because they use their capital expenditures to pay out distributions. They use other resources to pay it out, and they're not putting money or reserves away to be able to take care of property needs, right? And so for us, making sure that we surpass, right? I was trying to get smart with my words there, Melissa, but as long as we're able to surpass our business plan and our returns to you, that's what we're aiming for, right? And that's what, at the end of the day, when we sell this property, we want you guys to look at it and go, look, we hit 19%. We went past 19%. Oh, listen, we got 22, 23% return, so that you do invest with MF Capital again, so that you do invest with Sugo Capital again, so that you do invest with GLP again, right? Because you believed in our team from the beginning, and we surpassed what your expectations are with us. That's what our goals are on this property. We're doing the things that we need to right now, right? We can't control what we did in the first quarter. We can't control what happened in the first 6 months. but we can control with what's happening right now. Do we see interest rate, or not interest rates? Do we see insurance going up again? No, I see insurance going down as we continue unit counts and as we continue to acquire more properties, right? Taxes, do we see them going up dramatically? No, right? I mean, this is one of those times where, you know, taxes went up in Tarrant County like you've never seen, right? We've never seen that before, but we're not projecting it to go crazy again next year. And we've accounted for those in our numbers, right? Lindsay does a great job at staying on with the management company and identifying budgets, variance budgets, and making sure that we're in line with the underwriting that we did when we submitted stuff to you guys in our business plan, right? You know, with making sure we're on track. I think the only area we're really off on is taxes. But what did Lindsay do as a solution? She went and got RUBS and implemented RUBS to generate more revenue to come back to us. What happened? Protested taxes. You know, so those are the things that we're doing to be solution oriented, you know, to be cognizant of the investment that you guys have made and that we've made as well.
Ryan, on that note, I'll just put out there it is on my list already for mid-April. That is when we will have the tax notice for, you know, the next cycle. And then from April 15th until June 15th is the time frame in which we have to then do a protest again, so it is already on my calendar. April 16th will be, you know, the day we then start that process again. So we're looking ahead. We're, you know, trying to be as proactive as we can be in those areas right now, or always, but they're on the list.
Awesome. So obviously we've shared so much information. We've gone over all sorts of different ideas, what we've done, what the solution is, but just a quick overview, what are we doing moving forward? Are we going to sell? I know that we talked a little bit about refinance. What can investors expect? Mr. Wooley?
What can you expect to sell or to I thought we went over that, but I'll go over it again.
Just a quick overview, just so that we can kind of tie up exactly. Obviously, we've been talking for 50 minutes. So just to tie up how we're moving forward.
Well, Melissa, this tells me that you didn't listen to me. So I will go ahead and repeat this for you, right? So I do want to make sure we reiterate this. You know, in the business plan, we stated that, you know, for us overseeing it, we would get some asset management fees, right? You know, it's typically 2%. Currently, right now, we're not paying ourselves out on that. Why? The property is not performing. So at a level to be able to do that, we have a fiduciary responsibility to you guys, making sure that your investment is in a healthy place, right? And so we're not taking some of those fees right now so that we make sure, right? So that we make sure that the property performs in the way it should. So I do want to make sure that we point that out. But what can you guys plan on this? March 15th, you know, you're going to see it won't be March 15th because March 15th, we have a phone call with Greystone to know exactly what's going on if we're going to do the extension. At that time, after we find out the information from them, sometimes they've got to go committee and they've got to talk to their committee to figure out what they're going to do and what they're going to allow. Sometimes that takes 7 to 10 business days, right? Once we get that answer from them, we will let you know as soon as possible. We're projecting it should be by the end of March that we should have an answer from Greystone whether they're going to do the extensions. My vote is I would love to see the extensions to buy down interest rates, right? We want interest rates to continue to come down, right? You guys can get into it. My lovely friend, Mark, I'll refer back to you, right? Is, you know, in politics, they all play games. I don't give a crud if you're a conservative or a Democrat, right? They all play games, and in 2024 is real. It's the election time, right? And so we know that in 2023, interest rates are going to continue to come down. Because listen, they're buying votes. We know that it's historically happened. So we know that interest rates will continue to come down and be favorable for us. Now we want to get it down into an area where it's at right now, right? You know, 5.1% or better. I think that's going to happen. So if we can get these 2 6-month extensions, it would be the best thing for us. At that time, right? Selling, Melissa, selling is not the right answer, right? Like I said, we look at investor experience. Selling, you guys don't invest with us to get a return of capital. At all. I know that we didn't invest to get a return of capital. We want a return. And so refinancing would be the smartest decision. If we can get some, return of capital out of that, awesome. We'll try to do that. Currently, right now, we own $18.6 million on the loan. And so you guys can do the math on that for what we need to sell the property for to make a return. But selling is not the answer right now. So Melissa, the answer is getting 2 6-month extensions, getting interest rates down, and then refinancing into a better interest rate.
And that's something we're going to be every, 15 to 30 days will be on the table for discussion of where our financials, where are we at? We're then talking, back with the Meridians or the, Greystone, CBR, whoever that may be. And we're going to be having multiple conversations to have multiple options until we find what's going to be best. So it's an ongoing process for sure.
Hey, Melissa, as we end this, I would love to ask one thing, because we know that we have, as a team, we're 3 different companies, right? There's MF Capital Partners. We have investors in this as well. We have Sugo, which has their, Sarah has her investors in here. GLP that has their investors in. We would love transparency with you guys. We also realize that emails sometimes and quarterly reports aren't always the best, right? Like, looking at those, some of you guys can look at them, some of you don't. You may prefer a webinar. I would love to know in the chat, if you guys can post in the chat, would you guys prefer just a quarterly update, or would you prefer something more like this where we can answer questions? I mean, obviously we'll send the financials to you, we'll send the updates, but hopping on a quarterly webinar where you can ask your questions doesn't mean you have to hop on every time. But for me, webinars are always best for me to be able to ask questions like this. So we'd love to know in your chat what you guys would love to see.
And just like today, the recording will be sent out. So even if you attended, if you didn't attend, you're still going to receive the recording. So I think that it would apply to a quarterly webinar as well.
Awesome. Perfect. Stephanie, good to see you on here, Stephanie. I know I've talked to Stephanie quite some time ago. I talked to your husband recently. So, well, not recently, a couple months back, but that's recent. I'm getting old, right? Recently is a couple months ago, Melissa. So awesome. I do love this meeting format, guys. Yeah, I do love this meeting format. And here's the thing, we'll do a better job in the future of, we'd love for you guys to submit your questions ahead of time. I realize that sometimes you're just listening, don't have time to put it in the chat. But if you have questions, you can submit over. We'd love to answer those. I know the next quarter is coming up here, ending. And so we'll plan another one probably end of next month, Melissa, I would assume, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, you guys, it was a pleasure being on here. I don't know, Melissa, if you want to close it out, but it's always a pleasure. Listen, we understand where you guys are at. We want to make sure that you know that. Part of we have a fund. It's called the MF Aloha Fund, and part of Aloha is I see you see me, right? Like when we have the Aloha spirit, And the reality is we understand some of the frustrations. We get the frustrations. And we're right there alongside of you, right? We're constantly brainstorming of different ways that we can improve this property, right? And I think that it helps to know. I know Mr. Ryan was on, asked me some time ago, and I let him know, hey, we have $1 million into this property as well. And I think it changed the tune a little bit. I think sometimes people don't think that operators have their own money in, but to know that we have 1.25 million, and hopefully knows that you guys know that we're looking at the property equally, or just as importantly as you guys think that we would, right? Even if we didn't have money into it. And so we understand where you guys are coming from and the frustrations, but know that we're doing everything to get this property where it needs to be. We're on track to do that. Our team is doing an amazing job. Lindsay and Lisa, you're doing a great job on this property to get it where it needs to be. And we're super grateful for that. So look forward to seeing you guys end of next month. We'll send out another link. That link won't cancel next time, I promise. So we do appreciate the patience, and it's so good to have you guys on here.
And he stole exactly what I was going to say. The only thing that I would add is, y'all, we love your feedback. So if you have ideas, if there's something that we can do better, please don't hesitate to let us know. That's the only way that we're going to grow. So we love to hear from you, and we love to hear ways that we can better your experience, because that's really what our goal is. So don't hesitate to reach out with those. But we appreciate you guys jumping on, and please watch in the next couple of weeks for that webinar that we'll send out for the quarterly as well. Thanks so much, you guys. You guys have a great night.